hello. I'm Robert Cline Jr., just down the road now, currently living in Sheffield, Alabama, in the Village.
For those of you that don't know what Sheffield is, there are 4 little towns that haven't quite figured out that they're one city. Sheffield's got a whole bunch of history. Actually, Muscle Shoals Sound, both of the Muscle Shoals Sounds, which we're in the second location, 1000 Alabama Avenue by the river, which is currently Cypress Moon Studios. My studio, Heartel Studios, is located in the building, so it has a ton of history, but Muscle Shoals Sound never was in Muscle Shoals, is in Sheffield. For those of you that don't know where Sheffield is, you drive across a railroad track and you're in Muscle Shoals. So it's basically the same place.
Yeah, it's basically the same place. I found this place because I'm not from here. I'm originally from Texas, via Colorado, and I came here via a guy named Jimmy Nutt, who's got a studio here, the Nutt House recording studio here in
Amazing
Sheffield.
studio, amazing guy.
Yeah, and he really opened up my world to what is Muscle Shoals and getting to introduce me to the players, the people, and really tracing my knowledge of this area and just general music knowledge in general of American history of music and what it means to be here in the Shoals. So I met him through my friend Shelly King, and I got to meet him and the Swampers when they came to South by Southwest for the first time.
And the Swampers are one of the rhythm sections of the Shoals. Muscle Shoals has got the Swampers, Sweet Home Alabama, Leonard Skinner's song. So when you hear us refer to the Swampers as they're reverently called here, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and the people that really made music here, made it
well, they still do.
Well, that's right, they still do, and hence getting be invited along and see it and be a part of it and witness it. It's kind of been what I've been doing the past couple of years.
Okay, so you know Jimmy Nutt from being in Texas. I know he's from Louisiana. Is that how you guys connected?
He was an artist, and he played with an artist, Shelly King, out of Austin, and played in her band. That's how we met. This is post-documentary of Muscle Shoals, right? So I got to see this. I was originally a fan of guys like Drive By Truckers, and then Jason Isbell went on his road, of his own as an artist, and I got to see those guys in Colorado. I was living out there as a fan of music. That's when I really started working on my music, and I hooked up with a band called the Subdudes. The Subdudes, originally from New Orleans, but they settled. Many of their players and band members settled in Fort Collins, Colorado, where I met them, and that's when I really started the recording process and jumping into this about 6 or 7 years ago, and that was my first introduction of what music was in terms of, not only a business of it, but as a culture of it, and seeing it, performing it, and getting into it that way. But so around Fort Collins, I got to jump in, record a record, and start performing through them. Through the Subdudes, I met Shelly King. Shelly King introduced me to Jimmy Nutt, and then here I get to meet some of the greatest musicians of American history, So while we're in Austin, Texas, I got to ask Spooner and Dave and these guys, man, I would sure love to come. And they said, well, yo, come check it out.
This during South by Southwest.
This is South by
right?
Southwest.
They were doing a big push for the documentary. And
right.
It would have had to have been, when is South by Southwest? I can't remember.
It's in March.
Okay, so yeah, that would have had to be probably 2014, I would think.
Probably something like that, yeah.
Because I think the movie came out 2013, I think. I think I'm right about that.
That sounds like about the same time frame, and I was just really had no idea, and still very green about how this all works. But it comes out down to getting out and playing for people and writing songs that are in your heart, and I think that's what Muscle Shoals has always been about: is taking artists wherever they are at their journey and giving them an opportunity and valuing them as a storyteller, a songwriter, and helping them create something great.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really think of Muscle Shoals as a songwriter's town, but it is very much so. Both of us are songwriters. There's a whole bunch of songwriters here that have Nashville country music cuts, but they are either from here and moved there, or they live here and they commute. They have a publishing deal there. But it's not just a recording studio musician town. It's full of a bunch of songwriters.
Well, and it's how you relate in a room to create music, and our job is to tell a story, and their job is to help paint that picture, and so it's been a real education. Obviously, the history of it, but like you said, they're still making music. They're still, increasing the value of what they're doing on the top charts to your grassroots artists that are developing and growing and getting out on the road and making a living doing this.
So, what was it when you visited Muscle Shoals that did you decide to just come visit and hang and check it out and then decide to move here?
Yeah, well,
What was it that
I got an invite to
made you
really.
stay?
Well, it was really, the first opportunity coming here, I got to sit in a session that Jimmy was engineering and recording, and I think it was like Dan Penn, Spooner, it was all these
Oh,
greats.
that's why you stayed.
Well, it wasn't just that. It was
Well, that's
it was
a pretty good introduction.
they were there to record. They ended up recording probably about 8 to 7 songs throughout the day because they had their songwriting group they put together and they produced a demo. They recorded 4 songs in the morning, 4 after lunch. And
Which
it
is
was
pretty typical.
Yeah, it was a way that they collectively worked on them. Was presented it, and it was a way for me to see, open that door and see what that process was.
Yeah, and
And
it's a very common thing here. People work pretty quickly, especially with demos. Nashville and Muscle Shoals are very similar in that
Yeah,
regard.
well, there's proficiency of musicians.
Oh, yeah.
And then also they were the artists putting that together. He was like seeing how you do it. This is how you record. This is how you write songs. This is how you make this a working progress of creating something. And so the creative element of it is very inviting and very supportive. And if you want to be around the best people doing what they do, show up and see what that's like. That's how you learn. Nobody comes to this town saying I'm the best songwriter, I'm the best guitar player. They come to learn and listen and be around the culture of what that is, and you might pick up something. You might see that. Why are they so good? Well, they work on it, they value it, and they pass it on to
That
people.
is a great point. To that, I think what you said about people passing it on has been something that I have personally benefited from.
Sure, we all have.
Especially on
Yeah.
the engineering and production and songwriting sides. Over the past few years, I've been mentored and legit, genuine friends with people that have taken me under their wing that I wouldn't be near as good as what I am now. I may not still be doing it because of the encouragement that I received. I may not have received otherwise. I mean, I'm forever indebted to that.
Sure.
And a lot of times people have this mentality of holding it all to themselves and not passing it on. And that is a very sad and unfortunate thing because once legends are gone, knowledge can be forgotten. And to me, that's one of the greatest things that somebody can do that is amazing at what they do is pass it on.
Right.
Because it continues.
Well, right. I mean, I think that's what's important, in their story is they obviously had a lot of success. They saw and created something that was heard by the world. But then it was also really kind of pulled out from underneath their feet. The industry changed. The economy of making albums and making music changed dramatically. So, I mean, they went through their hardships of it after the good times and still kept the faith of creating something wonderful.
And the joy of it.
And the joy of it.
Who was it? Mac McAnally said at David Hood's birthday bash at the Shoals Theater the other day. We were both at that. Great show, by the way. I think it was Mac McAnally said that you just look over at David and you see pure joy. He's enjoying playing no matter who he's playing with.
Sure.
And that's a guy that's a veteran for sure
Right.
that still enjoys it. And you can see some guys, it's like, man, I would love to be where he is, but you can tell they're kind of jaded and disingenuous with it. They're not really digging it anymore. But these guys enjoy it.
Sure. Because I mean, again, it goes to the changing of the industry, where if you're constantly feeling disvalued at what you're doing, it's soul searching to play for the real reasons of why we do this and in finding that joy and sharing that's the real magic of live performance and inspiring other people and being inspired by music. But it's the industry has changed in a way, and it's we're in a very fortunate time. From my story of kind of getting in this later in life and getting involved with some great mentors and having a cell phone that you can reach out and call people that are your
Right.
heroes. And so there's different challenges, but I think there's a lot more opportunity now, but it's really going back and valuing things that they would laid out before us, in terms of listening the song of creating melodic songs that are truly, they're not fake songs. There's a lot of fake songs out there that really aren't real. You can manipulate something that sounds like everything else and try to put $1 million behind it to do this. That's not really songwriters. Songwriters are telling you a story. They're making you feel an emotional experience, and you might relate to somebody differently after that song. That's the power of music.
Yeah, and not all stories have to be told with lyrics either. I mean, classical's a great example, jazz, and
Sure.
even some electronica stuff. I mean, I don't think it's a stylistically specific thing, but I
No,
feel
right.
like there's something innate in us as a human that can tell when something's just, it doesn't come from a place of being genuine and authentic. I think we can smell that. I don't know that we can put a finger on it, like say this is why, because
Right.
all our definitions are going to be different. But something about it, it's like I don't know what that is, but I'm not into it. Or you may enjoy it, but it's like there's clearly a difference in a song that comes from a place from within that you're creating and you're putting out there your soul to the world versus I just followed a formula because this is probably going to sell
Right,
and make
right.
money. There's a difference.
Well, and it's also a difference of how it's sold as a commodity. I mean,
Yeah.
right now, there's no better time than now for artists to get heard, get their music out there, and begin building one fan at a time because they're able to reach somebody in a million different places. So
I think there's something very powerful in what you just said, not to cut you off, but
Yeah.
reaching fans one at a time because it becomes this overwhelming task of I've got to build my fan base. And something I try to be aware of is that if I can reach one person, well, then I will reach two, then I will reach 10, then I'll
Sure.
reach 200, hopefully. But if you can never reach that one person genuinely, you're not going to reach the 100,000.
Right.
It's just not happening. You've got to connect with individuals. I
Well,
think it's easy to lose sight of that.
Well, in that relationship with, like a live performance, the venues that have you, the venues that host you, that relationship of presenting a show, your show, to tell your stories, a songwriter show or a band show or something that is, you're not struggling to just play, just play for anybody. It's a relationship that you are there to share a moment, and
Yeah,
that's the
absolutely.
importance of the venues, the promoting, how how do you create a crowd that's going to say, hey, I'm going to be able to put this guy in front of some people that are going to appreciate him.
Yeah, I think, in the recording studio, we're always trying to capture whatever that moment is, quote
Sure.
unquote, and concerts. I think that's why we all enjoy going to concerts. We're hoping that moment, that special moment happens where all the stars just seem to align and everything connects. Again, I don't know if it's something we can 100% put a finger on and say, ooh, he hit that note just right. But it's something still you can tell when the musicians connect with each other on stage, or even if it's just a solo artist. Perfect example is John Paul White at David Hood's birthday. Man, he had the audience in the palm of his hands. And it was because what he was doing was real. He just laid his soul out there for everybody. And that connected with everybody.
Right.
At least, I saw
No,
it. It was
absolutely,
palpable.
absolutely.
You could feel it in the room. Again, I don't know if you can 100% describe it and say this is this, but you know it when you see it and then experience it.
Sure.
It's a moment that we all, especially musicians and songwriters, we're always in search of that.
Sure. As a performer, as a songwriter, having that connection with your audience, I think
Yeah.
that's the goal of a good show, of a good, whether maybe it's, in somebody's living room or in front of a bunch of people.
Right.
There's a relationship of respect that you're having in that exchange.
Absolutely. You said something just a few moments ago that I want to kind of go back to. You said you got started at this later in life. Is music a thing that you just recently picked up playing and singing, or did you younger in life? And put it down and come back to it? I would have assumed you've been playing your whole life and just been working on this thing your whole life because you're solid. You got great songs, you sing great, you perform well, so you've got the whole package deal. It doesn't come across as something that you just kind of picked up later in
Yeah.
life. It does not come across that way.
Well, it's interesting, you know. I guess because I grew up singing in church and singing in choirs and things like that, but I never really thought about pursuing music. And it was when I graduated college, I got a guitar. My mom got me a guitar as a college present. It's like I wanted to really work on the guitar, you know, get a guitar. But it was just, you know, putting those chords together, you know, just learning that part.
So you didn't learn to play guitar at all until college?
Right. So it
Wow.
was really around like grad school. I was going to grad school at Colorado State in Fort Collins, you know, and
What was your major?
human dimensions of natural resources. So
I have no clue what that means.
yeah, so I studied natural resource issues and basically studied on how to communicate those issues and measure people's perceptions, ideas, thoughts, and values about them to better, you know, manage resources. So I was actually a statistician for the government. I worked
That's
for
interesting.
USGS, and then I got into oil and gas. Did that for 15 years. Professionally, it was titles. It was a liaison, and kind of managed and did like contracts and things like, you know, totally different kind of thing. But I was on the road a lot working, and I'd carried my guitar with me as something to do. Either you watch TV too much, eat too much, go out too much, or something, you know. So it was a way I could sit in my hotel working as work, put a couple of hours in on practicing.
Well, that makes sense how you got good so fast because
Because it takes time. It
Oh, it
takes
does.
time. And then it wasn't until I was 30 years old when I sang and played for the first time out. You know, it was like that moment
Wow.
of like, you know, playing and singing and really trying to put that together. And so this all kind of really happened across the country. I was working in Wyoming, living in Colorado, and first sat in with a band when I was terrible. I was probably like 27 or something, and then just I got that gig by carrying equipment. That's how you get your first gig. Is say I'll show up and carry something, and then they let me play a little bit, and it's all right. Yeah, that's good.
just keep carrying
Keep
stuff.
carrying
Don't
stuff.
play anymore.
No, but they did, you know, as I'd come back, and this was up in Sheridan, Wyoming, at actually the HF Bar is the name of the place. It was the first dude ranch ever.
Okay.
Actually, that little ranch is in Buffalo, Wyoming. And then my first time getting out and playing in front of anybody was in Bruton, Alabama. So I ended up there and had a coworker that kind of talked her way into letting me play a break for a fella in a bar, and I just kind of got the bug. It was like, wow.
When did you start songwriting?
Shortly after that.
So it was after you got the bug of
Yeah, you know,
how-
I'd kind of
Okay.
you know looked into it, but I had you know a handful of songs I was able to play, and really, you know, got to start covering my favorite artists. And
What was your first song you played out?
first song I played out, you know, I did some Towns Van Zandt,
Oh, nice.
Reckless Kelly,
Yeah.
stuff like
choices.
that, Guy Clark. It was songs like that I was really in. And then I guess I got to go to there's this big festival in Colorado in Steamboat, and I got to hang out with all these artists that I knew their songs, because I really dove into a lot of the music through the Napster years. I was one of those guys that downloaded a lot of stuff because I didn't know who, I knew, had my collection of, Guy Clark's, Robert O'Keen's, and people like that from Texas that, as being from Texas, it's very Texas centric. They like what they know, and they know what they like, kind of scenario. And I was around a lot of that. And so I got to hang with the Reckless Kelly guys and the Jason Bolins, and when they were just getting after it, and see that a little bit, but I didn't know who they were, but they were just regular guys doing their thing. And but I figured, at that time that these guys are killing it. They're riding in buses, doing their deal, and I had no idea what it took them to get there and what it takes to stay keeping the bus full of gas and all that. So, but I saw that inspiration, and thought, man, I would love to do this, and so I really those are the things that really motivated me to start writing. And I met a gentleman at one of these festivals called Dr. Gary Hartman, and he introduced me to Kent Finley. Kent Finley was a guy that drove George Strait to Nashville for the first time. He was kind of his mentor and had a place called Cheatham Street Warehouse, and he had a songwriter night once a week. You could go sing your songs, original songs, and anybody would be there for the 2 hours, 3 hours you were there. You'd sign up and hear everybody sing their songs, share yours. But Gary introduced me to him, and I got to sing some cover songs and for him. And Kent said, "Listen, go write your own songs. You got to tell your story. You're working on something. I can hear you singing. You're singing some good songs. Go write." And that's when I later ran into the Subdudes. I started, made an album which was titled "All the Right Reasons." And it was interesting. That particular album, I wrote it as an album. I wrote the songs for it. And that's kind of how I've done my other album. And I write other songs as well, but trying to tell the story of why in the world would anybody want to do this? As you start unveiling the curtain, it's like, it's tough out there, But as a songwriter, we are compelled to do something. We're all people are compelled to do something. If you find your true gift and really try to understand what that is, it's a scary journey, and you got to have faith to be who you are and to be true to what you're trying to do. And so that was my first attempt to figure this thing out.
So when you decided to leave your previous career path, what was your decision-making process? How did you, was it like, I've just got to do this completely on faith, or did you have work lined up? Or
That's a perfect question, because it's really about sustainability, right? Being able to create a career of anything in life, you got to be able to sustainably pay your bills, cover,
yeah, absolutely.
you can't say, I'm going to be an artist, I don't need money. And, I was fortunately able to, had to sell an extra vehicle to cover the cost of finishing a record, sell my home, to be able to be responsible enough to invest in going out and being a touring artist, because that's how I'm making a living now, is running around on the road doing the live thing. But it's also something that's allowed me to work on my craft and put 100% into doing that, because it's not just all about, as as an artist, you gotta book stuff, you gotta manage stuff, there's a lot of different hats you have to play. And it's great.
Oh, yeah.
And it's great that right now we have the ability to do all of those things, but it takes away from being an artist sometimes. It takes away.
It really can.
So it takes a lot of, time management and this economics of sustaining yourself, being able to make records and go out there and present them to people to where you're sustainably living, and hopefully thriving at what you do best. As you do more of what you do, you get better at it. So
a couple questions that brings to mind. One is, what advice would you give somebody who's wanting to do this? And specifically, you have a unique story in that you had a career.
Right.
You'd already went through grad school and you had a set career path.
Sure.
And you found later in life, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is my joy. This is my path in life. And you jumped out on faith on it, which is scary.
It was super scary.
I mean, what advice would you give to someone who may be in a similar situation as you, where it's
Sure.
like, this is what I'm supposed to do, and I'm scared, and I know I've got to sustain, and I've got to pay bills, and I've got to be able to eat, support family if they have one. Maybe they are a songwriter and a musician and they want to be a dentist. Maybe they're an architect and they want to be a songwriter and a musician and a touring musician. It's not specific to any career path or genre.
Sure.
I know a guy who was in the military and in his 40s became a youth minister,
Right.
which sounds a little not youth minister-ish, but he was excellent at it. I'm 32. I know when I was 29, I'm like most 29-year-olds, man, I'm about to be 30. Not really where I want to be in my life, you know, that kind of thing that you deal with as a human.
Right. Yeah, so certainly, yeah, because there's a social status of it. And there's a lot of different expectations people have on musicians, you know?
Talk about that.
So-
like,
so-
how do you handle the social thing and the expectations? I mean, how does that?
Yeah,
how do you manage that?
So it really comes down to being true in what you're trying to do. You know, it's so going back to the fear of like, oh my gosh, this is scary. You know, it is scary because, you know, right now it's a challenging position. People are getting paid. You know, a lot of times what they were getting paid in the 70s to do their job.
Oh,
You know what I
man,
mean?
absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
and so it's interesting taking that conversation to people who have no concept of that. Because I was one of those people. I
There's
was one
very
of
few
those
people you can communicate with. I was going to kind of talk about that a little bit later. To me, that just shows how important community is
Sure.
in whatever it is you do. If you're a dentist, you need to hang out with other dentists that they can understand what you're dealing with in life and with your career, and performing musicians, studio owners, songwriters.
But it's also
Whatever.
taking that conversation to people who appreciate their dentist. You know, everybody pays
Yeah,
their
yeah.
dentist.
Well,
you know, 'cause
yeah,
like, you know what?
absolutely. Or
If I'm missing a
should.
tooth, yeah, right. If I'm missing a tooth, I'm going to pay him well to do his job.
Right.
And so there's that thing that's changing, and that goes into royalties and the big element
Right.
of the economy of what has changed. But it comes down to value. You know, valuing these people
Absolutely.
in your community, and you know,
Perceived value.
perceive all those things. Because I was really fortunate. Like when I hooked up with the sub dudes, like I was able to inherit a big audience at first. You know, here I am later in life. These guys are professional musicians. I learned that later. I didn't realize how lucky I was.
Well, that's kind
Yeah.
of the same kind of deal when I was interning at Wishbone in 2008. I didn't realize at the time that interns don't get pulled in demo sessions very often. That's a very rare thing. That doesn't happen. Usually you're cleaning toilets, making coffee, answering the phone, and sweeping. If that. If occasionally you get lucky to sweep the floor in the studio and you can kind of look and snoop around and see what gear's in there, you got lucky there. But I was actually pulled in on stuff. I did all the other as well, but I didn't realize till like 5 or 6 years later how unique and rare that was.
Well, and then you pay it forward because you appreciate
Exactly.
it. You know?
Absolutely.
And it's you know, so taking that whole concept of utilizing those opportunities is like, wow, I'm fortunate to where I'm at and appreciate that. Play the gig that isn't necessarily the most rewarding, but it pays a little bit, and you know the difference. You learn to know the difference of, you know, why you're in it. You know, anybody could go start a cover band and play all kinds of stuff that everybody, like, you know, I would love to, you know, start a George Strait cover band and charge $5,000 a night for it because people would love it. But that's not me as an artist, you know. That's me emulating something. So the harder path or whatever is to be true to what your calling is and how you are, you know, trying to present this and why you're presenting it as an artist, and then using your skills to take it to people. You know?
Did you meet up with much resistance from people that knew you at the time,
Well, you know, it's not really resistance.
or people that may just be like, I don't understand?
Well, but it's different, you know, than, you know, I guess with family of like, what do you do? Because I used to make a ton of money. It was like, I was hard, you know, it was a great industry to be in, you know, to walk away from making a whole bunch of money and like playing on the weekends and having you know, I could have had a great band on the weekends and had a great job and not jumped into it 100% and still enjoyed music, and it would have been fine. But it wasn't the same thing as like, if you have an opportunity to hang out with the people you're hanging out with and work with them, and you're not fully putting faith into that, you're missing out on an opportunity. You're missing out on the real opportunity of what it takes. So that's the real, you know, talking about the resistance is people expect you to be challenged. For you to really to have your epiphany, they're going to help you walk through the wilderness. You're going to walk through the wilderness. That's regardless. And some people will, you know, turn their back on you, and that's the reality of it. And unfortunately, economically, that takes away so many people's opportunities. It takes, I mean, it's hard enough out there for people, but that's what the world does to everybody. And so,
Yeah, it's not specific to one industry. I mean,
no,
the
no.
days of the gold watch and the retirement party are all but gone for our
Right.
generation. I mean, you may sign up with a company that has a pension, but I mean, we've seen our parents and grandparents' generations be like, well, we filed bankruptcy or we had a corporate buyout. We're not abiding by that contract. So we've kind of gotten a little to where we don't really trust that system so much. And on the topic of a lot of venues paying sometimes what people were making in the 70s, I've talked with quite a few musicians about that. That's a problem here in the Shoals. It's a problem in a lot of places, but also in just a lot of industries. A lot of jobs pay about what they paid in the 90s. I mean, so it's a risk no matter what you do. I just talked with a guy today whose dad retired a month or two ago. Found out he's eat up with cancer, and he won some small lottery, and he was going to be set up for life, and had all these plans. He had just retired. Then there's that. So you never know what
we're all terminal. What do you know?
You never
But
know what
it's-
life's going to throw
sure.
at you. So it's all a risk.
It is, and it's great to have music there to help us along the way. Like,
Amen to that.
You know what I mean? Like, as a performer, as a fan of music, this says, like, that's what the blues is all about. Like, man, I've been enslaved. But you cannot take my spirit. You cannot take this love that's in my heart. Like, those are the things that remind us of what we're doing. And gosh, we need that. Because we
need it so bad now. I know I do.
Yeah, we all do. We all go through that.
And that's the human condition.
That's
We
the
all
human
need
condition.
that.
And that's how we take this music and build bridges, versus blowing them up.
Right. That's a whole different conversation.
It is, but it isn't. It's like it's
Well,
just that
yeah, you make a
own,
point.
That own point of, should I sit down and try to put faith into to move this dream of the American dream that we all have the ability of building, having a family, or whatever our dream and purpose is, or ignoring that and locking that away and just doing what you're told just so that you get by another day. Like that's the whole, perversion of life,
Yeah, I don't believe a single person is put on this earth just to exist and that be the extent of what they do, is they just exist. There's a difference in living and existing. To me, I find it extremely exciting and encouraging to hear your story that you had one path you were already doing, but you discovered yours along the way and you said, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. It's scary, but I'm going to do it. And you're living proof that you can succeed as a performing musician and a songwriter, a recording artist. And to me, that is awesome, especially in the music industry where that is almost a thing that people, I don't know, maybe have a little bit of a struggle believing that you can do that. It's like,
well, and then the other big win is moving here, is raising a family here, having the ability to be around while my little girl's growing up, and all those things. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
that's
traveling is
obviously
a
important.
big going to be a big part of my life, but a big win is valuing what's around me. So when I came here and sat down with those guys, it was like, man, this is the real deal. They're not, trying to write the next biggest hit that's going to be terrible. They're going to write a song that's good. Whether it's the next biggest hit or not, it depends on who finds that song. And so I think that goes them being true to who they are and giving back in their community and having an opportunity to learn from them. And it's nothing like they're just, trying to share this wisdom. They're just sharing and showing love by respecting you and not, being egotistical and about their accomplishments, because there were a lot of challenges they've met before they made those accomplishments,
yeah, they remember where they came from and what it took to get there. I mean, was your experience similar where you just kind of felt like you were pulled in a little bit as an equal almost?
Yeah, well,
I mean, it's kind of like I'm taking you under my
it's
wing.
very humbling, but yeah,
it,
there's
because I had that kind of experience, and it's weird. I mean, to step back and be like, man, I'm kind of viewed as an equal. Why am I in this room? Well, I guess I'm supposed to be. Okay,
but
they
it's,
want me here.
yeah.
That's a weird feeling. Maybe that's an imposter syndrome kind of thing.
Well,
but it's like, because you don't see yourselves as equals as your heroes. I mean, it's kind of hard to see that, but
Right.
to be treated that way is a very
But
Oh,
that's
it's
what's
a very
humbling
special-
about it's
yeah,
humbling.
It's very humbling.
But I think that's how you show somebody.
And
what
that's
it's
part of
about.
showing how this is how it's done.
Yeah.
It's not just the techniques of the musicianship and the recording and all of that.
Yeah,
It's-
there's no
This is how
mystery.
you are as a human.
This is and that shows throughout their music.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. One of the things that our mutual friend Will McFarlane, that's played with anybody and everybody, one of the best guitar players in the world, in my opinion, played with Bonnie Raitt. So, I mean, obviously that should say something. Incredible person. I've heard him say a lot that no one here really mails it in. Like when people talk about what is the Muscle Shoals sound, well, it's something in the water, which, we all kind of laugh at that, but there may be, I don't know. But I think what he said pretty well describes it. When they possessed the talent and the experience, they could mail it in. They could just show up and kind of, okay, we got through that. I got paid. Let's move on. They don't.
They do not.
They never do that. They bring their best every time. And I know from experience of Shauna Tucker was here playing bass on a session last Saturday, and she was bragging about the bass tone I was getting. Well, I did a little minimal EQ, but in all honesty, it was plugged in direct, and it was her. So what she was hearing that she was liking was her. I mean, yeah, I did a few things with the sound, but not much.
Right.
I didn't have to.
But that's what an instrument is. It's connecting that to your soul for your own.
Yeah.
It's the paintbrush, it's the pen, and creating that forum in a studio for that artist or that bass player, the musician to find to be tuned in. That's an important thing because. You could have the greatest artists around. If they're, in a busy subway trying to play something, it's not the same thing. They're not meant to be there. They're not going to be valued the same way. Nobody's going to expect them to be there. They're not going to be able to, so it's not the place where you would like try to record a thing. You would do a social experiment to see how it doesn't work, but it's difference between putting them into the right place to tune in to their spirit of what they're sharing.
So what did moving to Muscle Shoals do for you as a songwriter, other than having that encouragement and that community? I mean, did you find yourself writing differently? Did you find yourself digging to a different place or anything?
Particularly with the recent album, it's been released a year ago. It's been running that around.
Great record, by the way.
That record was really about tapping into what is this sound. Why is it? Because I didn't know. I had no idea. I really didn't know.
See, I find that really interesting that you're not from here. You ain't from around here, boy.
Right.
But you tapped into that. And like when you told me, well, I'm not really originally from here, I'm like, really? Because you and Gary Nichols wrote the song Boys from Muscle Shoals, which I told you a while back is totally not cheesy. A lot of songs that people write about cities like Nashville or Muscle Shoals, they throw the name in it, and it's like, oh, God, another one of those songs.
Yeah.
No, this really was a song that's like, wow, that song rocks. And it tells the story for what it is and pays homage to everything. And it's totally not. It's not
cliche.
It's not cliche, and it's not got the cheese factor.
It was intimidating pushing that out because I wrote that on a lunch break, coming back in front of grabbed the notepad, write the first couple verses down, and I held on to it for a little bit, and I showed it to Gary, and he's like, "All right, that's cool, but that's how I was playing. He's like, that's a Memphis groove. Let me show you something because." As the guitar player he really taught me what he was doing.
We will continue with part 2 of Robert Cline Jr.'s interview for our next episode, so be sure to tune into that. Thanks again to all of our listeners for tuning in to a Muscle Shoals Storyteller series of a Tape Noise podcast. We are on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn, SoundCloud. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.